due to the complexity and challenge of the project. The mission included 2 identical spacecraft, each consisting of a planetary lander and an orbiter. Their primary mission objectives were to obtain high-resolution images of Mars, determine the composition of the Martian atmosphere and surface, and most importantly, to conclude if life existed. In the summer of 1976, both Viking spacecrafts arrived at their destination. As they eased into orbit, onboard cameras began scanning for potential landing sites. After a favorable landing location was chosen, each lander separated and descended to the planet's surface. The landers touched down over 4,300 miles away from each other, making history by becoming the first mission to land spacecraft safely on the surface of another planet.
Well, when we landed on Mars, I was quite jubilant, especially jubilant when I knew after the second landing that we had 2 relatively successful landers. In fact, the experiments on both landers worked beautifully.
Before the Viking mission was ever launched, many people thought Mars might harbor abundant plant life and microbes living among its rust-colored rocks. But the 2 landers quickly dispelled these notions. The landers revealed a world seemingly devoid of life at all. In an attempt to conclusively prove or disprove life on Mars, the 2 landers conducted 3 biology experiments by remote control from Earth. One of the experiments, called the Labeled Release Life Detection Experiment, collected soil samples that showed signs of possible microbes, but the consensus of scientists interpreting the data believed that the findings did not prove that life existed on Mars.
We guaranteed it for 90 days, 3 months, and I think the lander landed and operated successfully for about 6 years, which was quite a surprise to me because I was familiar with the failure rates of parts, and it turns out that once a few failed, as they did on the way to Mars, when we got to the surface, we were relatively lucky and had very few failures thereafter.
Together, the 2 landers accumulated 4,500 up-close images of the Martian surface. They also collected more than 3 million weather-related measurements, including the first on-site observations of a global Martian dust storm. The 2 orbiters, circling high above the planet, snapped 52,000 images covering 97% of the Martian globe.
I was very thankful that I came to Langley. Those spacecraft were successful not because of me. They were successful because we had such a tremendous pool of talent here at the field, and I hope that can continue into the future. I believe research ought to go on. It's the best way to get your money back. You can't spend too much for research.
The data retrieved from the Viking mission exponentially increased our knowledge of Mars. Volcanoes, canyons, craters, and evidence of surface water for the first time became apparent from the orbiter images. The Viking mission proved to be one of the most successful missions in NASA history